Ace was sprinting down a long corridor. He didn't remember how he'd escaped the cell in New Bramer, but right now he didn't care. Hazel was right in front of him, running away from him for some reason. Maybe she was chasing someone. Why couldn't he remember? Had he been drugged? All he knew for sure was he couldn't lose Hazel again. He had to keep running and keep calling her name until they were together again.
Hazel, stop!
Hazel did not stop running. If anything, she added a burst of speed and really started to lengthen the gap and pull away from Ace. He whistled, but Hazel didn't seem to hear him. He kept sprinting ahead, farther, faster, until he lost sight of her. Hazel? Up ahead, the corridor turned sharply to the left. Ace slowed and took the turn. The corridor opened up into a huge domed cavern. There was a giant hole in the floor, and Ace had to stop himself at the edge. He peered down into the depths, but there was a hazy fog and he couldn't clearly see any details. Then he heard a noise. It sounded like a dog barking once. Not an urgent bark, more like the bark of an animal that wanted to simply get your attention. Ace looked deeper, then saw something floating in the haze below. The object floated closer, up through the gray mist. Ace could finally identify the object. My optics! The optics goggles floated in the air for an instant before Ace reached out and grabbed them. He quickly put them on and toggled the power switch. As his vision cleared, he adjusted the brightness function so he could scan the hole in the ground. The beam of light glinted off something metal, and Ace swiveled back to illuminate the object. It was Hazel, sitting on her haunches, staring back up at Ace some 50 meters below at the bottom of the hole. Ace smiled. He was so close now to a reunion with her. Then someone pushed him from behind. Ace pitched forward into the hole. He was falling fast, the ground hurtling up to meet him. He tried to scream, but it got caught in his throat.
Wake up!
Ace slowly opened his eyes. The sentry was standing over him, looking down.
Time to go, bunker orphan. It's your big day.
Ace rolled out of bed and walked out of his cell. The trial was about to begin. Ace followed the sentry down a long, brightly lit corridor. It was quiet at first, but as they approached a door at the end, Ace could hear something, a soft murmuring that was getting louder and louder. Ace soon realized that it was people, talking excitedly, hundreds and hundreds of people having conversations. They were there for the trial. They were all there to watch Ace face judgment. His heart started to beat faster, and he made a conscious effort to slow his breathing and calm himself. Just what was he walking into? He realized that the sentry had started talking, saying something. Ace tried to drown out the rising cacophony of the unseen crowd and focus on what the sentry was saying to him.
You will look straight ahead and follow me to the defendant's bench. Do not make eye contact with anyone. Do not make gestures with your hands. Do not speak.
What's going to happen to me? The sentry stopped abruptly, spun on his heels, and pointed a finger threateningly at Ace.
You will not open your mouth. Understand?
But I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
I told you what to do. Sit down, shut up, and listen. The adjudicator will read your charges. You don't have to do anything, other than shut up and follow my orders.
Ace thought about asking another question, but he saw the sentry's other hand had slipped down and was hovering over the hilt of his cattle prod. Ace just nodded and stayed quiet. Satisfied, the sentry turned and opened the door to the courtroom. The second Ace and the sentry walked through the door, the buzzing from the crowd increased tenfold. He heard someone scream something. He couldn't make out the words, but he could tell they weren't being nice, as a huge cheer rose up right afterwards. Without his optics, Ace couldn't see anything in his peripheral vision anyway, so he just focused on the sentry's back and followed him closely. Finally, after what seemed like an endless march through a crucible, he ended up at a small enclosure with a single chair inside. The sentry opened up a waist-high gate and Ace entered. The sentry shackled one of his ankles to the chair, which was bolted onto the floor. then exited the box and stood just adjacent. Though the sentry was within arm's reach, Ace felt very much alone. The eyes of 1,000 people on him, already judging him, hating him. Ace turned slightly to see that the sentry's attention was focused elsewhere, then glanced back at the courtroom. The room was shaped like an amphitheater, with 20 rows of seating in a semicircle that towered above everyone. It was filled with people, and though he couldn't make out anyone specifically, it seemed like they were all looking at him. The focus of the room was on a stage at the opposite end of the chamber. The stage was 2 meters off the floor and was bare save for a podium. Ace squinted and could see a pitcher of water, a glass, and some papers on the podium, but that was it. Just to the left of the stage, there was a platform with a single chair, but there was nobody sitting there at the moment. Ace was in the center of the room, sitting alone. It made him think of the fighting pits in Obsidian Star. He had seen a few matches there, and always wondered how the fighters felt when they walked into the arena. Now he knew. Scared to death, and all alone. And just then, the lights went out. There was an audible gasp from the crowd. It was quiet for a moment, then music was piped into the room through speakers. Ace had heard the tune before, sometimes when sneaking into the market, other times when passing through low-level transit junctions. It always preceded some kind of official message. Ace hadn't paid much attention to those messages, but now he guessed this song had something to do with the Locke family. The song had a deep drum beat with a measured cadence, as if it would be used to march or maybe work. The melody was rich and triumphant. When the last note played and faded away, a spotlight flicked on, illuminating a door at the rear of the stage. The door opened and 2 soldiers marched out and stood at either side, coming to rigid attention. Ace saw red coloring on their shoulder armor and knew these must be the elite guard of the Gallows Brigade. He felt his heart racing. What a display this was. All for him? Then, a woman entered and walked briskly forward. The spotlight followed her as she moved to the front of the stage and looked out at the crowd. Ace recognized her from his brief encounter in Eagle's Nest. It was Mal's mother, Greta Locke. Ace realized just then that he didn't even know if she had survived the blast or not. But he wondered if Hazel had something to do with saving her life.
Fellow citizens of Subterra, you are here to witness the adjudication of an unchipped bunker orphan known as Ace, no known surname. I am Greta Locke, and will be acting as adjudicator. Will the accused stand?
The house lights snapped back on, flooding the room in light that momentarily blinded Ace. He was so entranced by the proceedings, he didn't even realize he was the accused and was supposed to stand up. The sentry turned and glared at him. Ace got to his feet and faced Greta. She walked over to the podium and picked up a slate, then turned back to the crowd, avoiding eye contact with Ace.
I will now read the charges against you. Ace, you are accused of crossing the sub-level 38 threshold without a biochip. You are also accused of violent acts causing death and destruction of property. You are accused of kidnapping Malin Locke with the intent to use her chip for illegal passage.
At the mention of Mal, the crowd broke their silence, talking amongst themselves, gasping in shock. Some even booed Ace. Greta held up a hand, demanding silence.
You are accused of colluding with traitors and plotting against Subterra and its citizens. And lastly, you are accused of unsealing the outer pressure door without authorization. This crime, based on the circumstances, could be punishable with a life sentence of hard labor in the mines, or, if it can be proved that you meant to cause harm to the citizens of the bunker, death.
The crowd gasped again. Ace, who had been standing there dumbstruck, listening to Greta accusing him, couldn't take it anymore. Feeling the restraints on his legs holding him in place, he squirmed to get free, desperately trying to move. It isn't true. I didn't do any of that. It was Carter. Ask Mel. She'll tell you everything. Chaos broke out as the crowd stood up and howled with rage. The sentry whipped out his cattle prod and zapped Ace in the ribs. Ace fell to his knees and cried out in pain. This got an even bigger reaction from the crowd.
Let him speak!
Silence! Silence, or I will clear this court!
The citizens calmed down and order was restored. The sentry grabbed Ace under his arm and pulled him up to his feet.
Not another word from you, or I'll hit you with full power next time.
I will not tolerate any more outbursts. We will be calling witnesses over the next 2 days and hearing testimony. When concluded, the accused will have an opportunity to speak in his defense. Then I will render my verdict.
Ace held his ribs and tried to catch his breath. He looked up at Greta and felt completely helpless. Back in Obsidian Star, Hazel was alone in the fighting pit. She was walking in a tight circle, scanning the area, looking for a way to escape. The walls were too tall and too sheer to scale, and the only exit was the door she had just been sent through. She could see humans at the top of the fighting pit, standing around the circular wall, some hanging to get a good look at her. They were very noisy and excited. Hazel diverted max power to her scanners, but couldn't find Ace's scent. He was not up there with the crowd, and not anywhere nearby. She suddenly heard the voice of the man whose smell overloaded her olfactory sensors, the man who tried to hurt her with the cattle prod and kept her locked in a cage with the other bots. His voice rose above the others until he was the only voice she could hear.
It is time, everyone! It is time! It's time, everyone! Let's go! The big fight is moments away! Gather round! Gather round! Don't forget to place your bets! A fortune is waiting to be made!
The door at the bottom of the arena opened with a hydraulic hiss that slid the metal door upwards. It was dark beyond the door, but Hazel adjusted her optical sensors and could see a bot there. It walked slowly through the door. Before Hazel could even move, the door slammed shut automatically. The bot began slowly walking toward Hazel. Hazel kept walking in the circle, keeping her distance. Hazel quickly ran a diagnostic on the bot. It was a Mass 3 security model. It had been modified. A steel plate had been welded over the shoulders, with either side tapered into a sharp point. Her scan also picked up a bent servo in the right rear leg. It was operational, but the Mass 3 walked with a slight limp. Suddenly, the Mass 3 lunged at Hazel and snapped at her. Hazel quickly dodged away, and the Mass 3's jaws caught nothing but air. The Mass 3 wheeled around, cutting off Hazel, and charged again. This time, Hazel leapt over the Mass 3 in a surprise display of agility. The crowd cheered. The Mass 3 stayed on the offensive, lunging and charging with relentless ferocity. Hazel countered every attack using her speed and cunning. She didn't know why the bot was attacking her, but she also realized that they weren't playing a game. If the bot caught her, it would damage her, so she kept dancing away from the bot's teeth and claws. This went on for a few minutes, and the crowd's tone changed into what sounded like disapproval. She heard the bad man shout again.
Fight! Fight back, you lazy tub of bolts! Just fight or die!
And then she felt something go wrong. Her battery power, which was at full charge, suddenly drained to 70%. She looked up and saw the bad man holding some sort of device. Was he doing this? Could he be draining her power? The momentary distraction was enough for the Mass 3 to catch Hazel off guard and rammed into her, pinning her against the wall of the arena. The Mass 3 shook its body, the end of the steel plate scratching Hazel's armor, creating a deep gouge but thankfully not damaging any vital components. Hazel twisted violently and rolled out of the Mass 3's grasp. She backed away from the bot but kept her eyes on it. Her battery was down to 50% now. She had to act fast. Hazel backed up until her hindquarters were against the wall. The Mass 3 was slowly stalking her, bearing down, jaws open, teeth bared. Hazel focused on the Mass 3, waiting for it to attack. Hazel saw the back leg twitch. In a split second, Hazel used her hind legs to push off the arena wall and launched herself up and over the Mass 3. It snapped at her, but the steel plate on its shoulder prevented it from completely turning its head to get an angle. Hazel flipped and rotated in midair and landed just behind the Mass 3, who was still facing the opposite direction. Hazel quickly bit down on the right hind leg and crushed the faulty servo. She whipped her head back and forth and severed the servo completely, pulling it free. The Mass 3 turned to attack, but the leg buckled and it fell down in a heap. It struggled wildly to get up, but the right leg was completely limp. The Mass 3 used its front legs to drag itself toward Hazel, but Hazel just walked backwards and easily stayed out of reach. The crowd was completely silent now. The only sounds that could be heard were from the disabled Mass 3 as it pitifully tried to get Hazel. Hazel felt another change and saw that her battery power had been restored to full charge. She looked up and saw the bad man looking down at her. He pointed at the Mass 3.
Finish it off!
Hazel stared back at the Mass 3, which had stopped trying to get to her. It was just lying in the center of the arena. Hazel sat down and simply stared at the bot. The crowd made noises of disapproval again. The bad man shouted back at them.
That's it, everyone. Match is over. Match is over. The Darva bot wins on a technicality.
The crowd booed. Some gamblers tossed their betting slips into the arena with disgust. Seconds later, the arena door hissed upwards. Hazel got to her feet, exited the arena, and went back to her cage. Mal waved her forearm in front of the chamber door, checking for the 1,000th time to see if it would work. It didn't. She was locked up, and there was nothing she could do about it. She turned and walked away from the door, and she spied the dress her mother had brought her. It was crumpled up in a ball on the floor. She sat on the edge of her bed and switched on her VCOM. She tried to find a channel showing the trial, but it had been restricted. She changed frequencies and discovered that all the channels had been blocked, except for an educational show about how to grow mushrooms. Mal got up and went to her desk, picking up her slate. She swiped through it, but didn't have access to the network. Her mother had completely cut her off from the outside world. She slammed the slate down on the desk in frustration and started pacing back and forth, mind racing, fists clenching and unclenching.
Let me out of here!
A second later, she heard a muffled reply from just outside her door.
Do you need assistance?
It was a sentry her mother had posted there.
Yes, open the door!
Your mother is the only one with the activation code. And stop screaming. You're not getting out.
Can you at least tell me how the trial is going?
But this time, there was no reply. Mal tried to lay down in bed, but couldn't get comfortable. She tried to work on a half-finished model of a mech warrior robot, but quickly lost interest. She sat down on the floor and closed her eyes, trying to meditate. Winter Garden had been her first taste of freedom. It was then that she was able to sneak off to the chute in disguise and live like an ordinary citizen. It was so exciting to meet new people and see new things. Her life as a lock was regulated and precise. Every second of her time was accounted for. Every move she made was tracked. But then she met Carter. And he had a different outlook on life. He spoke about freedom and having choices to do whatever you wanted. And while she believed he was telling the truth, he also lied to her about his real motives. He had used her, and now Ace was paying the price. She took a deep breath and cleared her mind of those events, focusing on something different, something that made her happy. She thought about Ace and Hazel, and their travels across the Barrens and up the sublevels, all the way to Eagle's Nest. She remembered the moment in the elevator. As the Surface Express chugged upwards, she had asked Ace to take off his optics goggles. She could see his face clearly in her mind. His eyes were pale blue and piercing. When Greta was a child, she collected raw gemstones. Her Uncle Gannon would find them in the mines and bring them to her as presents. When Mal turned 6, Greta gifted her with the gemstones. Her favorite was the topaz. It wasn't as valuable as some of the other gems or minerals, but Mal thought it was the most beautiful. Ace's eyes were the same color as that topaz. She opened her eyes and went back to her desk, this time pulling out a piece of paper and a charcoal pencil. She started sketching something with a flurry of strokes. She wasn't a gifted artist, but she wasn't half bad. 2 figures started to take shape. A young boy standing next to a canine bot. Now Mal's thoughts turned to Hazel. Where was she? What had happened to her? Was she scared? Was she looking for them? Her anger started to build, and she dropped the pencil and stormed over to the dress, picking it up off the ground. She held it up, giving it a long look. The dress was ugly to her. It was being forced on her, a mask that she didn't want to wear. She had no control over her life. She took a huge fistful of fabric and was just about to start ripping the dress to shreds when the door whisked open unexpectedly. Greta entered.
You're finally going to try it on. Good. Let me see how you look.
Mal dropped the dress on the ground in defiance.
Is the trial over? What happened?
Greta picked up the dress and laid it out on the bed.
Hardly. It's just beginning. I'll be calling witnesses. That's what I'm here to talk to you about.
You want me to be a witness? Testify against Ace? No. Absolutely not.
It's your duty to the family to restore our name.
I'm not gonna do it.
Greta looked around the room, her gaze landing on the charcoal sketch of Ace and Hazel.
I have a proposition for you.
I don't care.
That bot that was traveling with you.
She has a name, Hazel.
Fine, Hazel. I did some investigating and discovered she was sold to someone in the sublevels.
Where is she?
Greta nodded, realizing she had struck a nerve with Mal. This was something she was very interested in.
Well, we don't have the exact location, but Tomas fitted her with a tracker when Ace was brought to medical.
Then activate the tracker. We can get her back.
On one condition.
I testify against Ace. No way. I will never do that.
Mal, it is time for you to grow up.
You want me to lie?
I want you to help me clear your name.
By blaming Ace for something he didn't do? You think that's gonna make me a princess again?
Paint me the villain all you want. But I think you know what I am doing is for your own good.
No. I told you. I can't lie. Not with Ace there, in the courtroom. Not after everything he did for me. He saved my life, Mother.
Testify or don't, it's up to you. That bot you love can become scrap metal for all I care.
Greta turned to leave the chamber. Mal watched her, torn, overcome with anxious energy. Just as Greta reached the threshold...
Mother, wait! You don't understand. It's Carter who should be on trial. He fooled me, used me for my chip, and tried to kill me up on the surface.
Carter is dead. But the bunker goes on, and they need someone to blame. Mal, one day you will understand that tough choices must be made for us to endure. I just hope that day comes soon.
Before she could respond, the door slid shut, and Mal was alone again. "40 levels below Edendale, 100 miners were working in an active tunnel. The noise was deafening and non-stop. Drillers bored into the rock face. Crushers pounded loose rock into gravel. The air was thick with dust as miners shouted commands over the clamor.
Get that J pump up here! Back off the RPMs! It's overheating!
And then another sound could be heard. A deep rumble, and then a sharp crack as the roof of the tunnel split open and fell in on the drilling machine, crushing it. Alarms sounded.
Help! We need help!
The miners in the rear of the tunnel surged forward and started to dig through the rubble frantically. Minutes later, Gannon arrived on the scene and found the supervisor.
What happened?
We were pushing too fast, and the tunnel collapsed.
Any casualties?
1 dead, 3 still missing. They could be trapped on the other side, but that driller was crushed flat. It doesn't look good.
Keep searching. Find a way to get through. I want them found.
Yes, sir.
Gannon made his way back to the entrance of the tunnel. There were many injured miners being treated, men and women. Gannon walked among them, trying to offer comfort and encouragement. He came across a younger miner who was laid out flat on the ground, bleeding from his mouth. The medical team was working feverishly to save him.
He's got internal injuries. Blood pressure is dropping.
We're losing him.
There was another man there, attending to the injured. Gannon didn't know his name, but he had seen him there before. The cloaked miner from Oxford Turn. As the young miner finally succumbed to his injuries, the cloaked miner pounded his fist into the rock floor in frustration. He looked up, seeming to notice Gannon for the first time.
You said you were going to talk to your brother. We can't keep going like this.
The cloaked miner got to his feet and walked back and forth in front of the other miners.
This can't keep happening. We work like slaves and put our lives on the line so the citizens can live a life of luxury?
A few miners shouted in approval. Gannon was momentarily silent, unable to find the right words to de-escalate the tension.
We want justice for our dead! The rest of Subterra needs to know our pain!
We will have justice, I promise you.
But now the other miners were whipped into a frenzy. The cloaked man started chanting.
Justice! Justice! Justice!
And soon the other miners joined in, chanting in unison.
Justice!
The cloaked miner stopped chanting and turned to face Gannon. But Gannon didn't know what to say, or how to regain control. He just stood there and listened to the roar of the miners, demanding some kind of retribution. The door opened to a small white room. Mal was ushered inside by a sentry who moved aside so she could enter. The room had one other door on the opposite side of the room, but it was windowless, and she had no idea what was on the other side.
Where am I? What am I doing here?
Commander Locke wanted you to observe the trial.
I'm not testifying. You can't make me.
My orders were to escort you here and leave. There's a slate so you can watch the trial.
The sentry went back out the door and closed it. Mal was the only one in the room. There was a long couch against one wall, and a long counter filled with beverages and food. Mal drifted over to the counter and looked down, scanning the various snacks and refreshments. She stopped when she spotted 4 small dishes filled with brown cubes. She picked one of the dishes up for a closer look. She touched one of the cubes and squished it down, but it returned to its original size. A shiny liquid oozed out of the cube as it expanded. Mal lifted up the dish to her nose and sniffed.
What is this? Meat? Ugh.
Mal put the dish down in disgust, but could not tear her eyes away from the meat cube. She looked over her shoulder, confirming she was alone in the room, then picked up the cube and popped it in her mouth. She chewed a couple of times, then closed her eyes, chewing a few more times before swallowing. A smile spread across her face, but as she opened her eyes, the guilt caught up with her. She wiped her mouth with the sleeve of her uniform, then sat down on the couch. When she looked up, she saw that she had missed something in the room. There was a slate mounted on the wall, and it was transmitting video of the trial. She could see her mother framed from the waist up behind the podium as she spoke to someone. Mal quickly realized she couldn't hear any audio. She scanned the room and found a remote device to turn the sound up.
And Doctor, you said you saw a broken bioluminator in the records repository?
The video changed, cutting to a male scientist sitting in the witness box. He looked very nervous, but was still maintaining eye contact with Greta.
I did. I gave it to a sentry, and they logged it in as evidence. It was oozing algae all over the floor.
The video cut to a new shot. This one featured Ace in a tight close-up, the camera centered on his topaz-colored eyes. Mal took a deep breath. In the courtroom, Greta moved forward and held up the broken bioluminator for the spectators to see.
This bioluminator was scanned for fingertip impressions, and they matched the accused. Proof that an unchipped Baron dweller was able to infiltrate an area with level 3 clearance. And how is it possible that an unchipped person could gain entry to a facility containing our most treasured secrets and our sacred history?
I don't know. I guess our security is built around chips, but if you don't have one, you're basically invisible to the system. I just don't know how they opened the door.
Yes, this crime needed a conspiracy to work. Someone without a chip who could move through the sublevels without being detected, and someone with a chip, one that granted high security access. And that's what this boy, this bunker orphan, did. He led a cult of sun worshippers to kidnap Malin using her chip to open doors they shouldn't have been able to open. He stole a map from our records repository and deliberately and methodically worked his way upwards, building a bomb and detonating it at Eagle's Nest. This was to disrupt any counteroffensive, and he almost killed me in the process. He used Malin's chip, my daughter's, to open the hatch door and lead his flock out of Subterra. Does this explain how he was able to open the door?
It is the most likely narrative. He would need a map to find his way to the surface, and a high-security chip, like the one in Mal's arm.
It's not the most likely. It is the truth. My own daughter, the victim of a malicious, treasonous act, myself, nearly killed in a terrorist attack. All orchestrated by this bunker dweller, this unchipped boy. His plot's origin started at your doorstep in the records repository.
It would seem that way.
Can you imagine what other unchipped people could do here in Subterra? A blind orphan, a child, was able to kidnap a member of our royalty and breach the surface. We all know they are among us, but we look the other way. What could a small army of the unchipped accomplish, moving undetected by our security scanners? You're a man of science. What's your opinion?
My opinion? It could be an unparalleled catastrophic event.
Thank you for your testimony, Doctor. You are dismissed.
The doctor stood and exited the witness box, but didn't know where to go. He stood there for a moment confused. Then a sentry approached and guided him to a seat in the amphitheater. Inside the small room, Mal was frozen. She had watched the entire testimony of the scientist, but her mother, twisting his words and simply lying about what happened with Ace. It was too much for her to comprehend. It was all lies.
This is no trial. It's just propaganda.
Mal realized that Ace didn't stand a chance. There was no truth being told at this trial, just the story that Greta and her father wanted the citizens of Subterra to hear. She felt a growing pain in the pit of her stomach. 30 levels below, the trial played on the cracked screen of a slate in Obsidian Star. There were no spectators there, and the pitmaster swept up broken fragments of bots from the floor of the fighting pit. He dumped the scraps into a bin and walked through a gate. The pitmaster moved past the cages that housed the bots. He stopped when he reached Hazel's cage and crouched down to look her in the eyes. Hazel paced back and forth.
Darvabot, you won't make me look the fool again. I run the pit. I do. And what I say goes. Look, when I say finish an opponent, you do it.
Hazel let out a frustrated growl. The pitmaster smacked his fist on her cage door. The other bots in cages went silent.
Oh. Try that attitude with me again, and I will hit you with my fryer.
Hazel sat down and lowered her head to the floor of the cage.
You got a lot to learn about fighting for me. But you showed me something today. Ooh, you're a smart one. Cunning. You took out a bot twice your size. A real underdog. You're something special, aren't you, Darvabot? I think you are gonna make me a lot of money.
The pitmaster got to his feet and walked away. When he was finally out of sight, Hazel let out a sad, low groan. In Edendale, tucked behind Magistrate Locke's main chambers was Greta's office. The walls were adorned with detailed maps of Subterra, framed military medals, and a faded painting of Joseph Locke. Greta's desk was long and deep, affording her space to lay out large scrolls, charts, and tiny metal figurines that represented battalions of her gallows brigade. It was the office of a master military strategist, but at that moment, Mal was standing on the other side of the desk, fuming.
You had a sentry bring me here. So what do you want?
Mal, please, sit down.
What you did at trial? Mother, it made me sick. Why did you make me watch it?
I needed you to see what our obligation looks like, and it may offend your sensibilities, but that doesn't excuse you from it.
I will not testify. I will not lie for you. Ace saved me on the surface. I can't do that to him. And if you won't help me find Hazel, I'll get her myself.
Greta realized her hardline tactic wasn't working. She softened.
Mal, I know it was hard to watch, but this is for the greater good of Subterra. Our world is very fragile, and sometimes the appearance of order is what keeps it from breaking.
Save your speeches for your troops.
It brings me no joy to tell you this, but Ace will be found guilty. That's what's going to happen. There's nothing I can do to stop this. Dalton has already decided. But if you really want to help Ace, you'll testify.
I won't lie.
Ace is going to be put to death for his crimes. But I have the authority to commute his sentence.
Mal felt tears welling in her eyes.
He's innocent. And you're gonna kill him.
If you testify and tell the people of Subterra what they need to hear, I can spare his life. He'll spend the rest of it in a work prison, but he will avoid the lava pits.
I hate you.
I know. I know. But someday you will look back on this and understand why I did it. You'll see how important our name is to keeping order and peace in this bunker. Mal, I get no pleasure from doing what I do. But it is a sacrifice we Locks must make for the greater good.
No, I have to save Ace.
Greta took a piece of paper from her desk and slid it over to Mal, who picked it up.
This is what I need you to say in court.
As Mal read the words written on the page, she could feel a lump growing in her throat. She wasn't sure she could do this to Ace, but she knew it was his only hope. The next morning, Greta was back in the courtroom. The room was packed with citizens and Dalton's media cameras capturing everything. Greta steadied her nerves, preparing herself for what was to come.
The court will call its next witness.
From the back of the courtroom, 2 thick doors were opened by sentries, and Mal entered. The buzzing in the crowd increased as soon as she stepped out. She stopped and looked up at the overwhelming sight. The sentry gently nudged her forward, and she stepped into the witness box but didn't sit in the chair yet. She heard Greta's booming voice and turned to see her mother up on the stage, towering above her.
Malin Locke, the records will indicate that you are witness 7 Delta. Are you prepared to give your free and true accounting of the facts?
Mal stared at her mother for a moment, still processing the situation.
I am.
Be seated.
Mal quickly scanned the courtroom. She easily spotted Ace sitting in the center of the room. They made eye contact. He smiled at her, but didn't make any other movement. Mal, stricken with guilt, tried to smile back, but it was more of a grimace. The sentry seemed to catch the eye contact, and Ace quickly looked down at his shackled hands. Greta also noticed their silent greeting and caught the sentry's attention with a look, as if putting him on high alert. The sentry put his hand on the hilt of his cattle prod and sidestepped to be closer to Ace. Ace did not dare look up.
I'm going to ask you some questions about the events of the surface insurrection.
Mal sat up straight, but didn't respond, as if she was giving a nonverbal consent.
Do you know the accused? Please look at him and confirm.
Mal turned to look at Ace, but quickly turned away, as if she couldn't bear to maintain eye contact.
I know him. His name is Ace. No surname.
And is this the same individual that kidnapped you and forced you to join a rebellious cult? Is this the person responsible for the bombing at Eagle's Nest? Is Ace the one who breached the outer door and forced you onto the surface?
There was a charged silence hanging over the court. The crowd was leaning in, awaiting her response.
I suffered severe injuries while on the surface, and I'm afraid I can't remember every detail of my encounter with the accused.
There was a rolling murmur amongst the citizens in the stands, but Greta held up a hand, calling for order and silence.
It's understandable. Now, while you cannot recall every detail, you must know who committed these atrocities. Is he here in the courtroom with us today?
Mal stiffened, wishing that she was anywhere else than in that room. Greta was getting impatient, and she could feel everyone's eyes in the court, as well as the cameras that were trained on her, waiting for her to respond. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath.
No! He's not in the court! His name was Carter, and I willingly joined him and his pursuit of the surface. It was Carter who convinced me that there was a better life outside of Subterra. My chip was the key to getting out of here. So I helped him. Until I met Ace. He was the one who helped me realize there isn't anything on the surface. Ace showed me that Carter was using me. And when Carter forced me onto the surface and tried to sacrifice me to his sun god, it was Ace who saved me. I owe my life to him.
But Mal could only think those words. The truth would not be told in the court. She held her head down, unable to face Ace or her mother. Finally, she spoke.
Yes, I remember now. He kidnapped me. He held me against my will. He was part of a cult that was obsessed with going up to the surface, and nothing was going to stop them. I was kidnapped because I had a chip. He was behind the bombing of Eagle's Nest. He forced me onto the surface.
Who? Name him.
The accused. Ace.
The crowd reacted again. The courtroom erupted in wild chaos.
This witness is dismissed.
The sentry appeared and guided Mal out of the witness box. She turned back, trying to find Ace. He was standing as panic erupted all around him. She called back to him.
I'm sorry, Ace. I had no choice. I had no choice. I will fix this.
Ace knew she was speaking to him, but couldn't make out the words. The room had erupted with loud chattering and shouting. He could only watch as Greta joined the sentry to help him drag Mal out of the courtroom.
I'm sorry, Ace! I'm sorry, Ace! I had no choice!
Subterra. Written and produced by Steve Krueger and Warren Davis. Narrated by Marty Yu. Performed by Cece Boyce, Jenette Goldstein, John Sylvain, Doug Perkins, Hugh Fink, Matt Williams, Steve Krueger, and Marty Yu.